In this video, you're going to see an interview with Virginia, and she is going to talk about her ETS surgery and her experience and whether she regrets it or not, and whether it was successful or not according to her. So if you'd like more information about ETS surgery and a personal experience, you better stick around. If you have been curious about ETS surgery and have done your research, but you're still not sure whether you think it's the best solution for you, how cool would it be if you could sit down with someone who had the surgery and inquire about their experience? That's a thought. Man, how cool would that be to actually hear from someone who had the surgery? Wonder how we could make that happen. I made it happen, people. Actually, Virginia made it happen because she agreed to the interview. And she's the one who had the surgery to begin with. Today, we're going to be talking about ETS surgery, which I know that so many people in this community are either completely terrified of that and they wouldn't even consider it whatsoever, or others who are like, I am desperate and I don't even care. Like, we will go for it regardless. But when you go out and read reviews, Google can scare the crap out of you. And I think that from what I've learned about just hearing some of your videos on your Facebook page and seeing your Instagram, you have quite a different experience, and you share from a perspective that's not really one way or the other. It's just your perspective. And I like that you don't overly push your opinion on anybody. And I think that it would allow to create an opportunity for people to have a conversation around it instead of absolutely yes or absolutely not. So I just want to start out by asking you a little bit about your blushing experience.
Okay.
When did you notice it? What triggers it? How did it start for you? Just any backdrop about yourself and your blushing experience.
Sure. It's interesting. I remember it, the first time I really remember it was in high school, but I'm sure it happened before that. But in high school, I had to get up in front of the middle of the class, and it's high school, so kids are even more brutal. And I had to do a presentation, and of course, I turned bright red, and of course, all the kids, oh my gosh, she's turning so red. And at that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, because you can feel the heat, you can feel the warmth. So, it wasn't just a matter of you turning red, but you knew it was happening because of the feeling you had. And then fast forward up until like my early 20s. I don't know exactly, again, I don't know exactly what triggered it worse, but it got worse to the point where, the smallest interactions would just trigger me. And I discovered later on, looking back, that I had really low self-esteem, low confidence. So just any type of situation where if people were looking at me, or just if I felt like I said something silly or stupid, bright red, but I can't tell you why it got worse after high school, but maybe like that was in the back of my mind. And I had some really unhealthy relationships. So I think my self-esteem and my confidence was just pretty low back then. So it got really
Right.
bad.
Yeah, I noticed that a common theme, it seems like, with people that I've spoken to is that we all kind of have this pivotal moment where somebody called it out, and that judgment just fell over us in that need. Because we talk about a lot of times with blushing, there's a lot underneath it. And even in regards to talking out loud about it, because people are so fearful and ashamed of it, that it's something we shouldn't talk about. And what I've found with talking to different people is that they've just kept it secret for so long, and they're relieved when they're like, yes, somebody else understands. And I saw on your video on Facebook that you had just finished an interview for a job, and you said that you felt better if you talked to people about it and explaining to people that you have an overactive nervous system. And you gave a little bit of feedback about how I just came out of this job interview, and you basically pointed to it to let the person know, I might be turning a little red or splotchy right now. I think this was after the surgery, but you were sharing about that. And you specifically said, I just feel better when I talk about it and let people know. And you could even explain it in a sense of, hey, this is what's going on with me. Can you just give a little bit of, because they're not seeing that video, about your feedback about that job interview? Because that's a big one with this group as well, is when they go into job interviews and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to start blushing or flushing.
Sure, of course. And before I touch on the interview, it is huge when I talk to people, and it's crazy to me how, to me, it was so easy to tell people about it. And then I talk to the people and they're like, oh, I say, well, would you want to talk to your boss about this or that? Oh, no, 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 no. And I'm like, oh my goodness, because to me it did help tremendously, because I kind of plugged it as a condition, as opposed to me like, I'm not embarrassed at this moment. Well, until you say I'm bright, I'm red, and then I turn redder, and now I really am embarrassed, you know. But so it kind of helps in that way. I feel like it's almost being proactive as opposed to reactive, right? So if I'm
Right.
saying, hey, just so you know, I'm about to turn red right now, then they can't point it out to me. Well, they still could, but it's less, I don't know, it doesn't have much of an impact on me.
It's already been
So
addressed. It's already been addressed at that point. So that I think
yeah,
that's something that I noticed, that the more I've openly been, since I've created this channel, the more I've openly been talking about it. I shared really with some close people around me, here's what's going on. This has been going on for a long time. And it just diffuses the power of that fear. So
yeah,
I
exactly.
definitely agree with you there.
Yeah. So that interview, yeah, it was my first job interview that I had since the surgery. Gosh, I don't remember when that was. I mean, it was probably 10 months. I think it was like 10 months after my surgery. And yeah, I went in there and I'm like, I'm probably a little red now. I can't see, but because I don't blush here anymore, but I do get splotchy here sometimes when I'm like really nervous or hot or both or whatever. So yeah, I was in there and I could feel my neck getting hot, but that doesn't bother me like the way the blushing did. So I even more so was like, just so you know, and I actually love telling people about the surgery. It's such a great conversation piece, starter, especially in an interview. So yeah, I went in there, I could feel it. And you know, they always want to ask questions like, what makes you want to do this and why not before? And of course it's like, well, before I would have been deathly afraid of turning red, and now I don't have that fear because I had this surgery, but I still get a little nervous and it still
Mhm.
shows. But you know, so I was able to talk about it, but I still felt the nerves, I still felt the heat, but it just does not bother me the way the complete blushing, which would be the red here and even down my arms and stuff.
So your experience was that because a lot of times on the channel we'll talk about, I'm a chest and neck blusher, and a lot of people are face blushers, and so they will say, "Oh, you've got it better." We've had this debate on who has it better, and the chest blushers are usually like, "I would take face blushing any day because then I could cover it, especially for women." But then the face blushers are like, "Absolutely not. You can wear high neck and you can hide it." So it's funny to hear the debate back and forth. So for you specifically, you had more of like an overall blushing, and now it's only a little splotch on your chest or so.
Right, because there would be different situations where literally specifically, if there were specific situations that made me either upset or nervous, then I would just get splotchy. I wouldn't even blush.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are situations where if I was blushing, then if everything just turned a straight red. So they were totally different situations, and the situations that caused the most hardships for me were the times where I would actually blush. So that's why this doesn't bother me too much. Although recently I had a very, very uncomfortable situation at work, which made me get very hot, and I could feel it, you know, and so that bothered me a little bit because I was like, just like the blushing, I'm wearing my emotions on my neck and chest. But those situations are very few, so I don't let them get to me as
Yeah.
much.
So this is such a great conversation because you've had both and you still experience one part of it. I think it's really interesting to hear from me as a chest and neck blusher, that to hear someone who has had a little more like facial blushing as well, to still have some of that going on and say, actually, this doesn't even bother me that much because it's you can compare to what it used to be like. And in your world, it seems like it's gotten so much better since the surgery. When did you get your surgery?
So I got it August, I want to say 26th. I think it was the 26th of August 2019. So it's been a little
2019.
over a year for sure.
What made you consider do every time I always have a mermaid pen, and every time I start pointing with it when I when I'm having work calls, they just start cracking up. They're like, "Yep, there's our mermaid pen."
I love it.
And like, how can you be? I'm like, "You guys need to." They're like, "We cannot take you seriously with the mermaid pen."
I'm glad you told me it was a mermaid pen because I would have just been like, that's interesting.
Like,
She has a
what is
fishtail
this?
for a pen.
What made you consider the ETS surgery? Like, what was your moment of like, this is it. I'm gonna look into this and I'm gonna do this.
So when so for my blushing, some of the situations, for example, that would really trigger my blushing would be when I was at my lowest confidence level, hence a new job, a new job. I'm the type of person that wants to be the best at what they're doing. And of course you can't be the best at day one, but that's what I always want to be. So new jobs, it made it worse. So I kind of went like a roller coaster with it, because I think it would kind of calm down a little bit. But then if something came up like a new job, then immediately, it would get worse. And I had a new job. I got a new job. And there was a coworker of mine who we love to like razz each other. And of course, if I blushed, he'd love to be like, "You're blushing, you're blushing." I'm like, "Oh, I hate you," but we had fun. But he had no idea how much it actually bothered me. And then when I got really comfortable in my job, and I got really good at what I was doing, therefore, again, the confidence level grew. I I got better, and it happened a lot less. And then there was one day, so I was feeling good about it. It still would happen. Like, there's still triggers. If I ran into somebody unexpectedly, doesn't matter who, I would bright red. So those are still situations that I still had fears of and anxieties of, and certain things that I wouldn't do because I knew it would cause it to happen. So I just avoided it. So it was almost like it was masked though, because when it got better, I was like, "Oh, this is better." But under the surface, no, because you're not going to go do that. You're not going to go do that because you don't want it to happen. So one day I was at work, and I was in a meeting like we do every day at my work at the time. And, there's a bunch of us around the table, and something happened, and it triggered my blush. And I just felt it. And because it had been a while, I felt it, I focused on it. And usually I'm just like warm here, but then when it goes down my arms, that's where I really feel like it's just, and I look down at myself, I can look down and see it. And then at that point, like, it started getting worse again. And I told myself, you know what? I'm so done with this. And I had looked into the surgery before. It was, for me, a lot of money. And at that time, my husband and I were selling our house, and I knew we were going to get a good chunk of money from that. So knowing that, I just started doing my research. And I am the type of person where I don't really have fears of surgery and stuff like that as it is. So I just I looked into it. I found the groups where every single person bashed it. And of course, like, they all have their own experiences. But I just told myself, this isn't real. This isn't reality, because with people in this condition, with these fears and anxieties, if they had this surgery, they're not, most people just go and live their life if it worked, probably, right? Because they've already had those anxieties. The people, which I would be that person too, if something didn't work, I would be like, "Oh my gosh, just be careful. This didn't work. This went south. This gave me hyperhidrosis," all these things. So as soon as I joined one of those groups, I quickly got out and just did my research and told myself, you know what, I don't care. Like, I'd rather take the risk of it working or not, just to have this freedom that I've been missing out on.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. And you make such a good point about people who have had a great success with it. A lot of times at that point, they're moving on. They're like, "This worked. I'm moving on with my life. I'm so grateful." And there is a difference, right, between an actual ETS surgery and a micro ETS surgery? And is there something that gets confused between the two?
So I'm still not 100% sure on the difference. I know that the micro, I think so ETS, it's the same thing where they clip the T2 nerve. But I think what makes it the micro, because is the how small of like how small the tool they use and how small of an incision. I'm not 100% sure. But because of that, it's less invasive, and it's the, recovery time's a lot quicker. And there are other versions of ETS as well. Like, there's some surgeons who will clamp the nerve, which is not the best, not the best solution. And but I think that's the only other way of doing it, is either you clamp it or you cut it. My surgeon not only cuts the nerve, but he cauterizes it, just to make sure, because our body is our body, when that happens, of course our body's like, "This is not supposed to happen, we need to heal." So
Yeah.
just to try and make that extra effort to make sure it doesn't reattach, as he cauterized it. So but I'm not 100% sure on the micro part, but I just know that the clipping it is 100% better than clamping it.
Right. Wow, that's great information. And how did you qualify for the surgery? Is it the doctor who talks with you and makes sure that you're a good fit for it? And like, just a little bit of how your consultation went and how it was decided to move forward.
Sure. So So this surgeon, he was actually in a different state than me. Just doing my research, I found him. I wanted to find someone who was known for this procedure, not just a general surgeon. So when I found him, we had a phone consultation, and I explained to him, the triggers and what would cause it. And pretty much right away, he's like, yes, you would be a perfect candidate, just because of the fact that he knows that these triggers, these mental triggers, causes the blushing. And then he's like, this is what the nerve stops from happening. So he explained it to say, you have your light on, in your house, and there's wires feeding electricity. Well, if you keep the electricity going, but you cut the wire, there's still electricity being fed. It's just not being able to fully, go through and then make it to light. So,
Yeah.
so obviously it's still getting fed through. It's trying to, but it's not, it's not really able to.
Yeah, that's a great explanation, because I know for a lot of people, when we really get to the root of it, and when just so many different professionals I've talked to about, is this mental? Is it physiological? Is it biological? Is it, and I honestly think the answer to all that is yes. It's all, or one, or many. And I know for erythrophobia perspective, which is where we have that experience and then we start to obsess that experience. And that's what keeps us. I know I've talked to a lot of people who say they feel like they're blushing, but they're truly not, but they constantly live in that cycle of fear that they are. And then you have others who are like me. If I go from cool to hot, it's going to splotch. If I am really excited and passionate about something, I'm going to splotch. But then there's these other moments where I feel like I should, and I don't at all. And I'm like, what is going on with you?
Yeah, I completely agree and understand that, because even before the surgery,
if you think these videos are helpful, entertaining, fun, I just want to invite you to go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. And if you'd like to leave a comment below, please leave a comment below and tell me how this video has helped you once you watch it. All right, without further ado.
When I'm a very active person, so if I'm running around playing sports, I would turn probably 10 shades redder from doing that than blushing. And the same concept, when I get in the car, like I got in the car on the way home today, and it's warm here today, I get, my splotchy is even more than just like when I'm nervous and stuff. So I still, so it is physiological as well as mental. It goes together. And another explanation the surgeon gave to me was, think of that nerve like a muscle. And so we all blush, right? But most people don't do it that often. So for those of us who do it often, we're really just working out that nerve like a muscle, which is why it's getting so strong. So that's why it is a combination between mental and physiological.
Wow, that is so good. And that makes sense too. It seems like whenever somebody starts to ramp up with that, they start to get it more and more and more and more, because that's what happened for me. Could you give a rundown of what the experience was like from, we did the consultation already, but just the procedure and recovery, and just kind of a synopsis of, it sounds like because you're not afraid of surgeries, you just kind of like, I'm going for this. A lot of us, myself included, I think the biggest thing is when you read about what they're going to do, because I don't understand that world, my mind is like, holy crap, you're going to deflate my lungs and and do this and cut things and wiring and my nervous. It sounds so scary. But just a little bit of, just from your perspective, how the procedure went, and like just as much as you want to share there.
Yeah. Well, when I landed the day before the surgery. So my surgeon wants his patients to come in the day before, so we can actually see the patient and talk to them and go over everything. He's really wonderful. And so I didn't really blush, which was interesting. I did feel myself get all splotchy and everything. And so he said, he kind of like held my hand and looked at me, and I was like, what are you doing? He's like, just trying to get you to blush. And I was like, okay. As soon as he said that, I was like, well, now I feel myself getting warm. So he's like, oh, there it is.
Nice.
So anyways, he just quickly went over how it was going to go. Then mine was first thing the next morning. Pretty much, it was pretty straightforward. He came in and explained to me, he's like, what's going to happen is people like you that have an overactive sympathetic nervous system, once you're under anesthesia, you're going to turn red. And so what he does is he goes in under each armpit, cuts a small little tiny hole, which I couldn't even show you the scar. I mean, you couldn't even see it after like a week, really. It was so, by the time well, maybe longer, but by the time those stitches dissolved or whatever, you
Wow.
couldn't even really tell. And so he goes in through each, he's like, I'm going to go through each side. And when I go through like the left side, and as soon as I cut that nerve, it's going to stop being red.
Wow.
And then he said, then I'll go to the other side and do the same thing. So yeah, they inflate your lungs to be able to inflate so that they're able to get in there and get to that nerve without doing any more damage or doing any damage. Because I know some people have the fear of there's the drooping face, and I can't remember what that was called. Um, but so that is like it's a very, very small percentage if you go through the ETS route, just because it's less evasive, so the chances of it getting screwed up is slim to none, especially with
Wow.
someone who's experienced. So yeah, so he did that, and he explained to me, he's like, when you wake up, it's gonna feel like there's an elephant on your chest, but that's pretty much it. And so when I woke up, I have a nice little video that my friend took of me coming out of anesthesia, like with the thing behind me beeping, and I was like, why is it beeping at me? It's angry beeping at me. So I was quite entertaining, apparently. But basically what happened with me, which I guess is not the norm too, is when I got back to the hotel with my friend, I actually ended up not feeling great, and then I ended up throwing up, and then it happened a couple more times, and I just was not feeling great. So, and the surgeon gives out his cell phone to all of the patients. So he says, anytime there's anything going wrong, you let me know, because it's not at a hospital, it's a surgery center. So you go, as soon as you're out of recovery, you leave. So by 7 o'clock that night, because it was 8 a.m. surgery, so by 7 o'clock that night, my friend called him and said, she's been sick all day. So he's like, I'll be right there. And he came over in his scrubs, and he gave me some anti-nausea medicine. And he just said, you're reacting to the anesthesia. So after he gave me that, I felt much better, but I never felt pain in my armpits. It was only that heaviness in the chest. Like you couldn't take deep breaths, or else it would kind of be like, whoo, like it wouldn't hurt, but it would be pressure, and that lasted for just a few days. But then just like any surgery, your body's still recovering. So, you're tired for a few days, but other than
Right.
that, it was a really quick recovery.
Wow. It's just so interesting because it's so nice to be able to talk to someone who actually has gone through it. Because when you read about it, you just get like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. But when you hear about how tiny the incisions are and that it's a same day procedure, and that's what I was going to ask with the getting sick, if it was from the anesthesia. So it wasn't necessarily the surgery itself. It was from the medication to get you to sleep.
Yeah.
Do you know how long that surgery lasted?
I want to say he said it would be about, because after coming out of anesthesia, the last thing I was thinking about was time frame. But I believe he did say, I think he said it takes about 20 minutes on each side by the time he starts going, because
Wow.
it's just in and out, in and out. It's so fast. And then I think I recovered. I had to get there like 6 a.m. My surgery was like at 8. And then I think I got back to my hotel at like 11 by the time, they go, they have to get you prepped, and then the recovery and all that. And so it was probably about 10 or 11 by the time I got back.
Wow. Okay. So would
And
you say, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, and something that, because I know that I still get splotchy here, so it's caused from something other than that nerve, obviously. There's been a few people like yourself that have told me, oh, I'm thinking about getting a surgery. And then I always ask them, well, what's your experience and with blushing? Like, well, I just get it on my neck and chest. And I was like, I don't know if you want to do that, because I still get it. And one of the girls I was talking to, like, I don't, like you said earlier, I don't push someone to do it, and I don't try and talk them out of it. I'm just saying, here's the facts. You know what I mean? This is so I
Right.
told her the facts, and because she already had it scheduled and everything with my surgeon, I believe. I don't know how she found him, and then she found me. So and she had the surgery, and she's just like, nope, didn't work for me. So she's so upset, and I'm like, and I don't want to say I knew it wasn't going to work, but I had a feeling. I didn't know, of course, but I had a feeling it wasn't going to work, because even for myself, it's still, you know, it's still,
Right. And I do feel like when I've done some research, there are a lot of people who are like, I spent a lot of money, it didn't work. And it sounds like the majority of that is for chest and neck. And I think so much of the chest area and the splotches that come up the neck are anxiety driven. They can be stemmed from overactive nervous system, but I know for myself with some of the research that I've done, the doctors talked to me about, I don't necessarily think yours is, she said, I don't necessarily think yours is from a mental space. I think yours is from a physiological space, but your body still kicks a fight or flight response because of what you said about that muscle. That muscle's going and it's kicking that fight or flight response. And if cortisol releases into the body, you basically have a histamine reaction to the cortisol, which then is going to dilate those blood vessels. And my functional neurologist is like, it's dilation of the blood vessels at the end of the day. It's just yours is showing. But that is one of the main things that I've heard is that if it did work for facial blushing, not so much for the chest blushing, which is kind of telling you they're running on two different systems.
Exactly, for sure.
Interesting. So when would you say that your surgery was successful for you? And if any, what side effects did you experience?
100%. I tell everyone that I would do it 100 times over again. Because, sorry, my dog is.
It's okay.
He's like, he must be chasing something. And so 100% successful. The only side effects, because to me they're not that bad, is they always say, you know, you could have compensatory sweating. So I do feel like I sweat a little bit more, but I've always kind of sweat, you know, when I get nervous or when I get hot from running around and stuff. So that's why it's hard for me to tell. But every now and then I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm sweating a tad bit more than normal, but not like where you see online where people are like, my shirt is drenched with sweat and, you know, and all that. And all that other stuff. So because this is the same surgery used for hyperhidrosis, to cure hyperhidrosis, my hands are dry. And he told me that. He said, your hands will be dry and they'll be warm, which they are, but I'm used to it now. And then I don't sweat from like on my up here, like at all.
That's what I was curious about, because I thought I had read that this surgery can also be used for excessive sweating issues, but then you can also have a side effect of sweating because of this surgery.
Right. Well, and that's what's funny. I tell people when you type in ETS surgery, you see hyperhidrosis. You don't even see blushing half the time. You have to dig in for that because a lot of the people, and again, the same, just like blushing, I feel like this surgery works great for this blushing, but not splotching. Just like hyperhidrosis, I've heard of people who have the severe hyperhidrosis where it's in their hands, where they're dripping sweat. So it's the same embarrassment of like your face, right? You don't want people to look down and see, or you won't want to shake someone's hand. So that to me, I feel like would help. But if you're kind of feeling it all over, that obviously doesn't work all over. It's just kind of cutting it here. And there might be, because I don't have hyperhidrosis, never did, so I never looked into it, but there might be, maybe there's another nerve that would be cut as well for those people. I have no idea. But so who knows what they had or the condition that they were going through to make it to where it just got worse. Now, and also it's been over a year, and I was just talking to my friend who's also a hairstylist, and I'm like, what's going on with my hair? It's feeling so dry, and it's collecting everything I put in it. I can't even feel like I ever get it clean. And then I told her the other day, I said, you know, I wonder if it's because if I can't sweat, I'm dry up there. And so now my hair is, you know, and now it's been over a year, and my hair grows out so slowly that it's possible that's just taken that long for it to, you know, respond to the lack of you know, moisture up there.
Right.
So,
wow.
But all things that I will totally live with.
Right. Exactly. If you feel like you can function again. So before we jumped on here, and before I get up to our final question, I did do a Facebook post and or an Instagram post and asked anybody if they had any questions when I jumped on with you. I think you might have already hit it. I just got one message that just says, I'm really excited for this. And then I got another one that says, I want to know if she has any of the sweating that she said, but I think you will already ask that. And if she has any regrets from the surgery.
Yeah, not a one. I can't even, I mean, there's so much that has been happening in my life since that's just been so amazing, and situations that I never would have been able to do before. And I think what made it an easy decision for me to make is because I am an outgoing person in so many ways, but then that forced me to, okay, well, don't do this and have all these anxieties. And, you know, it's that constant that constant talking in your mind where, I mean, I just didn't even feel like I was a good listener to people. And I thought I'm like, I must be so rude, but I don't know what they just said. And now, like, I went to school. I just graduated last Saturday. I would never have gone to to school knowing that, okay, if I even wanted to ask a question, I would not ask it because everyone would turn to look at me. Or if I was afraid of having to go in front of the class to do a presentation, I know it would turn red. So was so afraid of it. So, I've got to go through school and I get to let my personality really shine through without having that in my mind saying, oh, don't say that. Don't say that. Oh my goodness. And so there's zero regrets from it
Wow.
for me.
That's incredible. I've heard a lot of people say they dropped out of school and because they were like, I just can't. So to hear all of the things that have opened up for you, because that's not hindering you and your mind anymore. And I'm the same way. When I was really having a hard time with the chest and neck flushing, I remember being like, I can't even fully focus on what the person in front of me is saying because I'm so worried about what's about to happen to me and waiting to basically, I'm trying to survive this moment. And so I'm in fight or flight already. The
Right.
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yep.
So for my final question for you, what would you want to say to anyone who is struggling with chronic blushing, flushing, erythrophobia, and anyone who might be considering the surgery? And even if they're not considering the surgery, being someone who knows the very real exhaustion of the situation, what encouraging words, however you want to share that, whether you hit all those topics or not, would you want to say to anybody who is watching this and getting information from you?
Right. Well, for me, before surgery, after surgery is when I really started to look at the mental picture of it, which is interesting. So what I would say now, having the surgery and going through everything I've gone through, and I'm still working on myself and my self-esteem and on my anxieties is, I've been telling everyone and some people may find it silly, but meditation is huge because obviously it is our mind kind of going on overload and it's us freaking out and worrying about all these things. And so meditation really helps for us to learn how to breathe. I'm also a very hyper energetic person. I don't drink coffee and I'm very like all over the place person. So I don't breathe normal as it is. I'm always like breathing, very
Shallow,
quickly,
yeah.
very shallow breathing. So, it helps you to learn how to focus on your breathing, which helps to calm your mind. And that really, really makes a big difference. And there was one other thing, I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. I was like, oh, don't forget to say that, but see that my brain went going. Another thing I tell people too is as much as I say we, because I know I don't blush anymore, but I know how it, I know the feeling, but when we blush and when us, I call us chronic blushers, when we blush, we try and tell ourselves, don't blush, stop blushing. And the stuff I've learned over the years and read over the years about the science of it is our brain literally hears blush. Doesn't hear don't blush, it hears blush. So that's part of that fight or flight to say, okay, this is you have to blush. So even if you try and, even if you are trying to tell yourself, okay, don't blush, you're actually amping it up to blush.
Wow.
So that's why I try and tell people, I know it's hard. Trust me, I was there. I get it. But, and I think that's how I got to the point where I'd go through those stages of not blushing a lot because I didn't have to tell myself, don't blush. It was just, I was confident and comfortable in my own skin and what I was doing and who I was, that I didn't fear the judgment. So meditation, focus on breathing, focus on your inner growth, because it really has so much to do as well with how we see things and how we feel about ourselves and how we perceive what other people see about us.
Wow. Oh, that's incredible. And I love what you said about meditation and breathing. I actually have somebody scheduled for an interview in the next couple of weeks she's a uh, Thai yoga massage therapist, and she does a ton of yoga and breathing techniques, meditation. And she's actually going to talk about the importance of meditation for chronic blushers. And I'm super excited to hear about that. So on the heels of what you're saying, it sounds like I'm very similar. I do drink coffee, probably way too much. Which I've cut it out before to see, like, is this what's causing the flushing? I'm like, please don't, please don't, please don't, please don't. And maybe I didn't let it go long enough, but it didn't matter one way or the other. So I was like, yes, we're going to keep the nervous system amped up. I'm going to keep drinking my coffee. But I'm super like, all over the place as well. And I remember one time my functional neurologist saying to me, because I would get super splotchy all the time. And I also was getting cold sores that were coming up all the time. And I remember he said to me, "Are you breathing?" And I was like, "Well, of course I'm breathing. I'm alive." And he goes, "No, like, are you actually like belly breathing?" And I was like, "I think so." And he taught me what to do. And it literally hurt the first time I did it because I had not expanded my lungs out that far and probably since I was a kid. And, but he told me to practice this over the weekend. And by that Monday morning, the constant feeling of I'm going to get, sorry, did that ring in your ear?
No.
Okay, my phone like rang. It's silent down here, but it pulled up on my computer. But the constant feeling of like this, I'm going to get a cold sore, I'm going to get a cold sore, went away completely. And the flushing stopped. It didn't stop completely, but it didn't happen all day long, every single day. And just from breathing alone. So that is fantastic advice. And thank you so much, Virginia, for your time today. I know that I don't take people's time for granted. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. Are there any final words you'd like to say or anything we missed that you thought of?
I don't think so. I think we touched on everything. I was just so excited to be able to talk about my experience. And I love that you said that I came across and I come across, like, I'm not saying to do it or don't do it. I'm just saying, this is my journey, take it for what it is. And then and I love the fact that as I'm growing past it, I want to find even more ways of helping people because not everyone can get the surgery and not everyone wants the surgery. And I don't blame them for that. So to be able, and I love what you're doing, to be able to find different people that can help get through it, like the meditation. I'm so excited to hear about that too. So, I'm just excited for more to come and just really glad that I was able to share it. It's so exciting.
Yes. Thank you so much. Because I think that there's more of us who are beginning to speak out and talk about these things in our different platforms or different spaces. And I know that you've been very vocal and have created a Facebook group to be able to openly talk about these things. And that to me is what I have this one post where I said something about like, what if we are the answer? What if us not really trying to stop it or change it? And I always say, continue to look for solutions. I'm for that. I hope that more medical professionals get involved in this conversation as well so that they can start to specialize in these areas. I think we have a long way to go, but I think we're getting there. I mean, you had a surgery that's been successful and that's huge for people who are debilitated or just really like, I want to do this. So, but I think we're getting there. And I think the more we talk about it and we uncover it and we say, this is okay. Like I'm still somebody regardless of what is happening here, but we also have options. But we also are in it together. We're in it together. And the more we hear from each other, like just hearing from you, I'm encouraged in so many ways about just my own journey. So thank you so much again for your time. And I know you got to go get your child, but I think we're right on time. We are right on time. But thank you so much. And
thanks, April.
All right. Thanks, girl. Bye.
Bye.
Was that not so good? So good. I am, again, so grateful for Virginia for agreeing to do the video and allowing me to record her and share it with you all. And again, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a comment below and tell me if you enjoy these types of videos so that I can do more of them. All right, and I will see you guys in a video soon. And until then, keep rising, you blushing phoenix. See ya.